She got lost in the dark forest, where the moonlight barely made its way through the thick crowns of trees. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and every sound seemed amplified in the oppressive silence. She had wandered off the path, lured by the whisper of an old legend about a hidden treasure buried deep within these woods. Now, with each step, the fear of the unknown tightened around her heart like a vice. The darkness seemed to press in from all sides, swallowing the faint beam of her flashlight. She stumbled over roots and brushed against unseen branches, her breath coming in shallow, panicked gasps. Every shadow seemed to hide a lurking presence, every rustle of leaves a sign of some unseen predator. Suddenly, she heard the rustling of branches behind her. Someone, or something, was following her. Her heart pounded in her chest as she spun around, the flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. Nothing. Only the silent, watchful trees stood in mute witness to her terror. She forced herself to move, each step becoming more uncertain as the ground grew uneven and treacherous. A cold wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. She could almost feel eyes on her, watching her every move, calculating, waiting. The forest seemed alive, its ancient twisted roots and gnarled branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to snare her. Her mind raced. What could it be? An animal? A person? Her imagination conjured images of wild beasts and vengeful spirits, stories she had heard around campfires and dismissed as mere tales. But now, in the heart of the forest, those stories seemed all too real. She tried to escape, picking up her pace despite the growing uncertainty underfoot. Her breath came in ragged bursts, her legs burning with effort. The forest was a labyrinth, and every turn seemed to lead her deeper into its clutches. Panic clawed at her, threatening to overwhelm her senses. She had to find a way out. She had to find safety. But as the trees closed in around her, their branches tangling in her hair and tearing at her clothes, she couldn't shake the feeling that the forest hid far more threats than she could imagine. The feeling of being watched intensified with each passing second. She couldn't shake the sensation of unseen eyes tracking her every move, hidden among the dense foliage. Her pulse quickened, the sound of her own heartbeat loud in her ears. The flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced like specters in the gloom. Desperation gnawed at her resolve. She had to keep moving. Stopping meant surrendering to the darkness and whatever lurked within it. She forced herself to focus, to search for any sign of a path or landmark. But the forest was a maze, each tree indistinguishable from the next, each turn leading her further from the safety of the known world. A distant howl echoed through the night, a mournful sound that sent chills down her spine. She glanced over her shoulder, her imagination painting vivid pictures of wolves or worse, tracking her through the trees. The sound of rustling branches grew closer, more insistent. She was not alone. In a moment of panic, she veered to the right, her foot catching on a root. She fell hard, the flashlight slipping from her grasp and skidding across the forest floor. Pain shot through her ankle, but she scrambled to retrieve the light, ignoring the throbbing ache. The beam illuminated a large tree, its bark scarred with deep, ancient carvings. Symbols and runes, etched long ago by unknown hands, glowed faintly in the pale light. Curiosity battled with fear. She had heard of these markings, remnants of an old, forgotten civilization that once inhabited the forest. The carvings were said to hold secrets, perhaps even clues to the treasure she sought. But now, they seemed more like warnings, a message from the past to those who dared to venture too far. Another rustle, closer this time. She snapped back to the present, her heart hammering. She pressed on, limping slightly, driven by a primal need to survive. The forest floor sloped downward, leading her into a narrow ravine. The walls rose high on either side, hemming her in, but at least they offered some semblance of direction. The air grew colder, the sounds of the forest muffled by the enclosing walls. She stumbled along, her flashlight the only source of light in the oppressive darkness. Her thoughts raced. Who or what was following her, and why? The legend spoke of guardians, protectors of the forest's secrets, but surely those were just stories. A low growl echoed through the ravine, a guttural sound that sent shivers down her spine. She froze, straining to pinpoint the source. The growl came again, closer, vibrating through the air. She turned slowly, her flashlight casting a feeble glow against the rocky walls. In the dim light, she caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow shifting in the darkness. Her breath hitched. She backed away, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her injured ankle betrayed her. She stumbled, the light swinging wildly. The growl grew louder, more menacing. She had to keep moving, had to find a way out of this nightmare. Summoning her remaining strength, she pushed forward, deeper into the ravine, hoping against hope that it would lead her to safety. But with every step, the sense of impending doom grew stronger. The forest was alive, and it did not welcome intruders lightly. She pressed forward, each step a struggle as her ankle throbbed with pain. The ravine seemed to stretch endlessly, a narrow corridor of darkness that offered no escape. Her flashlight flickered, the beam growing weaker with each passing moment. Fear gnawed at her, a relentless predator of its own, as she tried to keep her breathing steady. The growl echoed again, closer than before. She risked a glance over her shoulder, but the darkness revealed nothing. Panic flared anew, and she forced herself to focus on the path ahead. If she could just reach the end of the ravine, maybe there would be a way out, a path back to safety. The air grew colder, and a thick mist began to coil around her feet, making it even harder to see. She shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. The ravine walls seemed to close in, the narrow space amplifying every sound. Her own footsteps seemed unnaturally loud, a constant reminder of her vulnerability. Suddenly, a branch snapped nearby, the sound like a gunshot in the stillness. She whipped around, her flashlight beam revealing a pair of glowing eyes staring at her from the shadows. Her heart skipped a beat, and she stumbled backward, nearly losing her balance. The eyes blinked, then vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Terror surged through her, and she turned to run, her injured ankle screaming in protest. She ignored the pain, driven by pure survival instinct. The ravine seemed to stretch on forever, the walls a never-ending tunnel of despair. She had to find a way out. She had to escape whatever was stalking her. The ground beneath her feet grew uneven, and she nearly fell again as she stumbled over loose rocks and roots. The mist thickened, swirling around her like a living thing. Her flashlight flickered once more, then died, plunging her into total darkness. She gasped, her breath visible in the cold air, and fumbled with the flashlight, desperately trying to coax it back to life. A low, menacing growl rumbled from the darkness, so close now that she could feel the vibrations in her chest. She abandoned the flashlight, knowing it was useless, and pressed on blindly. Her hands scraped against the rough walls of the ravine, guiding her steps as she moved as quickly as she could. The growl came again, followed by the sound of something large moving through the mist. She could hear the crunch of leaves and the snap of branches, each sound a reminder of her pursuer's relentless approach. Her mind raced with thoughts of escape, but the darkness offered no answers, only more questions. Then up ahead she saw it, a faint glimmer of light piercing through the mist. Hope flared within her, and she pushed herself to move faster, ignoring the pain in her ankle. The light grew brighter, revealing an opening in the ravine. She could make it. She had to make it. As she neared the opening, the growl erupted into a deafening roar, and she felt hot breath on the back of her neck. She lunged forward, bursting out of the ravine and into a small clearing bathed in moonlight. She stumbled to a halt, breathing heavily, and turned to face whatever had been chasing her. In the moonlight, the creature was revealed, a massive, wolf-like beast with matted fur and glowing red eyes. It snarled, baring razor-sharp teeth, and advanced slowly, its eyes locked onto hers. She backed away, her mind racing for a plan, any plan, to escape. But the forest had other plans. As the beast lunged, she tripped over a hidden root and fell hard to the ground. The creature loomed over her, its breath hot and foul, its eyes burning with a predatory hunger. She closed her eyes, bracing for the end. But then she heard a sharp whistle cut through the night air. The beast hesitated, its ears twitching. The whistle came again, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching. The creature growled low in its throat, then reluctantly backed away, disappearing into the shadows. She opened her eyes, bewildered, as a figure emerged from the trees. "Are you all right?" the stranger asked, extending a hand to help her up. She took it, her heart still racing, and looked up to see a tall, rugged man with a bow slung over his shoulder and a quiver of arrows at his back. "I think so," she replied, her voice trembling. "Thank you. Who are you?" "My name is Elias," he said, his eyes scanning the trees. "You shouldn't be here. This forest is dangerous, especially at night." She nodded, still shaken. "I got lost. I was looking for the old carvings, the ones with the symbols." Elias' expression darkened. "Those symbols mark the territory of the Guardians. You were lucky I found you. Come on, We need to get you to safety." He led her through the forest, his steps sure and confident, as if he knew every inch of the terrain. She followed closely, grateful for his presence, and wondered what other secrets this dark, ancient forest held. Elias led her through the forest with a confidence born of familiarity. The trees began to thin, and the oppressive darkness eased slightly. She felt a glimmer of hope, the weight of fear lifting as they moved away from the ravine. Her ankle still throbbed, but the pain was bearable with the promise of safety ahead. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I've been tracking that creature for days," Elias replied, his eyes scanning the trees. "When I heard your cries, I knew I had to act fast. You're lucky it didn't get to you sooner." She shuddered, the memory of the beast's glowing eyes still fresh in her mind. "What was that thing? A guardian of sorts," Elias said. "These woods are ancient and full of mysteries. The guardians are here to protect the forest's secrets. You must have strayed too close to something they didn't want you to find." She nodded, the carvings flashing in her mind. "The symbols, do they mean anything?" Elias glanced at her, his expression guarded. "They do. But it's not something to be discussed here. Let's get you to safety first." They walked in silence for a while, the forest around them gradually becoming less menacing. The moonlight filtered through the thinning canopy, casting a silvery glow on the path ahead. Despite her exhaustion, she couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of the woods, the ancient trees standing like silent sentinels. As they neared the edge of the forest, Elias suddenly stopped, holding up a hand. She froze, her heart pounding. He listened intently, then motioned for her to follow him off the path. They crouched behind a large bush, and Elias nocked an arrow, his eyes fixed on something ahead. She strained to see what had caught his attention. A group of figures emerged from the trees, moving silently and with purpose. They were dressed in dark, hooded cloaks, their faces obscured. She held her breath, her fear returning with a vengeance. "Who are they?" she whispered. "Keepers," Elias replied, his voice barely audible. "They guard the secrets of the forest. If they find us, they'll take us prisoner or worse." The keepers moved with an eerie grace, their eyes scanning the forest. She and Elias remained perfectly still, barely daring to breathe. The keepers passed by, their footsteps making no sound on the forest floor. She waited until they were out of sight before exhaling, her muscles relaxing slightly. "Let's move," Elias whispered. They continued their journey, taking a more circuitous route to avoid any other patrols. As they walked, she couldn't help but wonder about the secrets the forest held. What was so important that it warranted such fierce guardianship? Eventually, they emerged from the forest into a small clearing. A modest cabin stood at the center, its windows glowing warmly in the moonlight. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the scent of wood smoke and herbs filled the air. Elias led her inside, and she sank into a chair by the fire, grateful for the warmth. Elias tended to her ankle, applying a poultice of herbs that soothed the pain. "You'll be all right," he said, his voice reassuring. "Just rest here for a while." She nodded, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "Thank you, Elias, for everything." He smiled, his rugged features softening. "You're welcome. But remember, the forest is not to be trifled with. The legends are real, and the guardians protect something far more valuable than treasure." She met his gaze, the firelight flickering in his eyes. "What is it they protect?" Elias hesitated, then sighed. "There are stories of an ancient power, a force that could change the world if it fell into the wrong hands. The guardians ensure that doesn't happen. Only a few know the truth, and it's best it stays that way." She nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. The forest held more than she had ever imagined, and its secrets were not hers to uncover. As she drifted off to sleep by the fire, she felt a sense of peace, knowing she was safe for now, but also a lingering curiosity about the mysteries hidden within the dark ancient woods. Days passed as she recovered in Elias' cabin, the forest around them a constant reminder of the dangers lurking just beyond the tree line. She had tried to pry more information from him about the guardians and the ancient power they protected, but Elias remained resolute in his silence, warning her that some secrets were best left undisturbed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the clearing, Elias joined her by the fire. He handed her a cup of steaming tea, the fragrant aroma calming her nerves. "I've been thinking," she began, about the carvings and what they might mean. If the forest is so dangerous, why were they left there for anyone to find? Elias gazed into the fire, his expression thoughtful. The symbols were left by the ancient ones, those who first discovered the power within the forest. They believed in sharing knowledge, but also in testing those who sought it. Only the worthy could decipher the symbols and uncover the truth. She sipped her tea, mulling over his words. And the guardians? Are they part of that test? Yes, Elias replied. They are the final barrier, ensuring that only those who truly understand the responsibility of the power can access it. It's not just about knowledge, it's about wisdom and intent. She felt a pang of regret for her initial quest for treasure. Her curiosity had almost cost her dearly, and she now understood the forest was far more than a mere backdrop for legends. It was a living entity, a protector of ancient wisdom. One night, she awoke to the sound of distant chanting. Slipping from her bed, she peeked out the window and saw a faint glow emanating from deep within the forest. Without waking Elias, she dressed quickly and ventured outside, drawn to the mysterious light. The forest, bathed in moonlight, seemed less menacing now, though she moved cautiously, each step a reminder of her earlier encounter. She followed the chanting, the rhythmic sound growing louder and more intense. The light led her to a clearing she had never seen before, its center dominated by a massive stone altar covered in intricate carvings. Around the altar stood the keepers, their hoods drawn back to reveal faces etched with age and wisdom. They did not seem surprised to see her. In fact, they beckoned her forward. She hesitated, glancing around, but the forest remained silent, as if holding its breath. "You have been chosen!" An elder keeper spoke, his voice resonating with authority. "You have shown courage and respect for the forest. Now, you must understand its true purpose." She stepped forward, her heart pounding. The elder keeper placed a hand on the altar, and the carvings began to glow, illuminating the clearing with a soft, otherworldly light. Images flashed before her eyes, scenes of ancient rituals, of people drawing power from the earth, of harmony and balance maintained through the ages. "The power you sought is not a weapon or a treasure," the elder continued. "It is the essence of life itself, a gift to be guarded and used wisely. Those who protect it do so at great cost, sacrificing their own lives to ensure the balance remains." Tears filled her eyes as she realized the weight of the responsibility the keepers bore. She understood now why Elias had been so reticent, why the guardians were so fierce. This was not just about preserving knowledge, it was about safeguarding the very essence of the world. "You have a choice," the elder said softly. "You can return to your life, with the understanding and respect you have gained, or you can stay and become one of us, dedicating your life to the protection of the forest and its secrets." She felt a profound sense of gratitude and awe. The decision was clear. "I will stay," she said, her voice steady. "I will do my part to protect this place and the power it holds." The keepers nodded in approval, and she felt a sense of acceptance and belonging. They began to chant again, this time a song of welcome and initiation. The forest seemed to respond, the trees swaying gently, the night air filled with a sense of peace. As the ritual concluded, Elias emerged from the shadows, a proud smile on his face. "Welcome, sister," he said, embracing her. "You have chosen the path of wisdom." From that night on, she became a part of the forest, a guardian of its ancient secrets. The darkness no longer held fear for her, but a deep, abiding respect. She had found her true calling, not in the pursuit of treasure, but in the protection of the delicate balance that sustained the world. And so, the legend of the dark forest continued, not as a tale of fear and danger, but as a story of wisdom, courage, and the eternal quest to preserve the sacred essence of life.